Hey, Keelaway. To sort of supplement our conference from that we missed the other day, I'm just going to read your paper back to you and sort of annotate my reading with suggestions for edits or things to think about within your own writing. So here we go. As far as format is concerned, it looks totally fine to me with your page numbers and your heading. Um, Okay, so there's a lot going on in the world of artificial intelligence, and to someone with no knowledge of the subject, it can be very confusing. What does the term artificial intelligence even mean? Why is it so important? To put it simply, the goal of artificial intelligence, or AI for short, is to make machines that can think. All right, so my first comment is you have a lot of words here that I don't actually think that you need. For example, I think that your two rhetorical questions are a little redundant. I think you can probably just provide that information without asking the audience to come up with it on their own. And the other thing is in your opening line where it says there's a lot going on in the world of artificial intelligence, that is super vague. And I wonder if you can talk about like the quick pace of development or the role of AI in modern society has advanced in a way that maybe we're not aware of, or something like that, trying to make it a little bit more applicable to the lives of the people in the classroom that you're going to be giving this presentation to. Um, because, for example, like I like how you defined AI as make machines that can think, but why is that important? So that's just sort of something to think about. So computers today are very good at doing things like processing data and performing calculations, but they are still not very good at doing things that even babies can do. AI researchers want to make computers that can learn and think critically. They are trying to create a computer that can perform any intellectual task that a human can. This is called artificial general intelligence. Artificial intelligence has, okay, so the first thing is you refer to artificial intelligence and you explain that you're going to be referring to it as AI, but now you're back to spelling it out again. So just always use AI. The second thing is now that I'm finished this first paragraph, I'm not entirely sure what your thesis is. So I think that you need to incorporate a little bit more of like an argumentative statement down here towards the end as far as what the necessity is of AI, why it's important, what we should consider, things like that. All right, so now I'm at paragraph 2. Artificial intelligence has many practical applications in the modern world. Looks like you have to do some editing there. Over the last few decades, we have seen the rise of new technologies like self-driving cars, computer assistants like Apple's Siri and Amazon's Alexa, smart weapons like drones, etc. So I would avoid using etc. in formal writing. I would just stop it after drones. Because etc. It's just much more of like an informal way of speaking. It is clear that the field of AI is rapidly growing. As AI systems get more and more intelligent, they gain more practical applications. So as computers get smarter, we can start using them for things that they had previously been unable to do. This leads to the idea of superintelligence. A superintelligent computer is a computer with intellectual abilities that surpass those of any human. Okay, so in this paragraph, I think you're really sort of talking about the applications of AI in the modern world, but you haven't really talked about how AI has developed over time. So for example, like Apple came out with Siri, I think in like 2011, maybe 2012. I'm not so sure about Alexa, but those were not the first instances of AI. And I think that providing like a timeline of AI development would be really helpful here for me to see what AI used to be and what it is now. And that would lend nicely into the idea of superintelligence, because if I understand the technology evolution over time, that will help superintelligence seem more realistic to me. Okay, next page. I'm not entirely sure if this is a new paragraph or if it is, because of this spacing, it seems like it's the same paragraph. Superintelligent computers could solve problems in math and science and have been unsolved for centuries. They could lead to new discoveries in any virtual virtually field. Many people believe that once the first superintelligent system is created, it will greatly increase the overall rate of human technological development. If this system is able to edit on its own code, it could become exponentially more intelligent as time goes on. In fact, this new development may be so fast that it becomes virtually impossible to predict its impact on society in the long term. This is why the development of superintelligence is also referred to as the singularity. In math and physics, a singularity is a point at which a measured variable reaches incalculable value. It is essentially a point at which something is impossible to calculate. Some experts doubt whether or not AGI is actually possible. What does AGI stand for? You talk about what AI is, but I'm not entirely sure what AGI is. American philosopher John Searle came up with an argument against the possibility of AGI called the Chinese room argument. So if that is actually like a formal term, then you should capitalize the C in Chinese, the R in room, and the A in argument, if that is something like that is known in that community. The argument goes like this. Imagine that there exists a room in which there is a man who only speaks English, a pen, a pad, and a set of instructions. There are two openings in the room, an input slot and an output slot. A Chinese text is inserted into the input slot. The man follows the instructions to transcribe the text appropriately, and then places the resulting text into the output slot. To an outside observer, the room functions as a machine for interpreting Chinese, but the man does not understand a word of Chinese and is simply following the instructions. This is a metaphor for a computer program that appears to understand language, even though no component of it can actually understand a word it is reading. Searle argues that even if a computer can be constructed that appears to speak any language, it is impossible for a system to actually understand the language because no internal component can actually comprehend what it is reading. So my question for you about this article is whether or not it has an author. If it has an author, then you should cite it by the author's last name. The most common counterargument to the Chinese room argument is called systems reply. The systems reply argues that even though the man in the room does not understand Chinese, the man, the pen, the pad, and the instructions form a system that does understand Chinese. It is not necessarily an easy concept to understand, but the phenomenon of individual entities collectively forming a larger entity with different properties is called emergence. Some see a utopian image when they envision life after this singularity. Computers could solve problems that have plagued humanity for centuries. It could start with new developments in science and mathematics, like developing new vaccines. Eventually, computers could begin shaping our lives in entirely new ways. Superintelligent computers could be our advisors, calculating potential ramifications of our actions and warning us beforehand. We already have computers that can calculate millions of chess moves in advance, so it could be possible to apply that kind of computation to real-life problems. It looks like you have an extra space after advance that you need to edit out. And the same goes with this citation, whether or not it has a writer, and if it has a writer, you should incorporate the writer's last name instead of the article title. Superintelligent computers could run simulations of all of the different possible outcomes of proposed solutions to society's problems and adjust the plans accordingly. This could mean a lot for the future of human civilization. On the other hand, the development of superintelligent computers could also be humanity's greatest mistake. The concept of machines rebelling against their creators has been explored thoroughly in film and literature, perhaps most famously in 2001: A Space Odyssey. In the film, the onboard computer on a spaceship turns against its crew and starts killing them off. While this certainly makes an interesting story, most experts in AI are not seriously worried about machines turning against us. Rather, they worry that if superintelligent machines have goals that are not properly aligned with those of humanity, it could lead to disaster. Imagine if a robotic healthcare assistant were programmed to ensure that no one was ever sick. While this does not necessarily sound like a problematic goal, for the robot, the simplest course of action to ensure that no one is sick would simply be to kill anyone who contracts an illness. In this case, the machine has not rebelled against humanity, it is simply following the programming. This gives an idea of how difficult it might be to specifically program superintelligent machines so that their goals are always exactly aligned with ours. Okay, so my question about this anecdote with the superintelligent machine killing people is that it seems a little hyperbolic. Can you come up with an example that may not be as like emotionally charged? Because I think that there's a little bit of a bias or like a Like there's a little bit of a logical fallacy in here because that's not the only way that it could be disastrous. There are other ways that it could do if it doesn't understand like the agreement we have, like the social compact that we have in humanity. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so I'm going to start where it says and when. So, and when problems like this are considered in the context of drones and other smart weapons, it is easy to see how serious any programming error could become. And even if AI works with humanity perfectly, there may be an unforeseen existential risk. If we create machines that can outperform us in every way, what purpose do we serve as a species? There is no easy answer to that question, but it is one that we may have to answer moving forward. The future of AI is certainly unclear at the moment. The singularity could be humanity's greatest achievement or its worst mistake. Some doubt whether or not the singularity will ever happen, and if it could happen, should it? This path could lead to new scientific and technological discoveries and the advancement of humanity as a whole, but it could also lead into a much more dire situation and possibly even human extinction, if the most cautionary minds are to be believed. Many people have their own opinions as to whether or not the rewards are worth the risk. The only thing that can be said for sure is that the field of artificial intelligence is growing rapidly and will almost certainly have a substantial impact on human society for better or worse. Okay, so my question for you is, I'm not entirely sure what your argument is. I think that you've talked about like the benefits, well, you sort of talked about the benefits of artificial intelligence, but have you talked about the benefits of singularity? I would also encourage you to find out, like, where are we in the singularity research? What are people currently working on? So, for example, I just recently watched a video posted by a lab through MIT that was working on robots to help them jump, and about how if these robots could jump and land on their feet while carrying different items, then they could potentially help our military, right? And so that, to me, seems like a really productive use of AI without reaching the point of singularity. But I think you really just sort of gloss over AI's function in society. Like, you don't really talk about like the use of Siri or Alexa or like self-driving cars or things like that, or the use of drones. And I think that really needs expanded upon. But I also, like, if I go back up into your introduction, I don't see an argument. What are you trying to prove? Are you trying to prove that singularity is important and we should see if we can reach that goal? Or should we not reach that goal because the potential harm outweighs the benefits? So those are some things I want you to think about. Your sentence structure as a whole is pretty good. I would consider going back through here and picking apart some of your word choice, because there are some areas where it's a little redundant, or I think that you might just have some verb agreement issues. Very few, but they're there. And the other thing is that your works cited page looks great, so you don't have to worry about that. That looks wonderful. So yeah, just a few things that I would add just to really round out your argument once you add that in there. Have a good night.